Running away can be a viable strategy, but today we're gonna see a mom run away and leave her kid.
Hi everybody, welcome to today's lesson on active self-protection. I am Stephanie Widener, the CEO, and as always, this is your host, John Correa.
Today we have 3 videos for you, the trifecta, bam! Brazil, Argentina, Mexico.
For all the people in your life new to firearms and concealed carry and looking to learn, my go-to resource is LTT Discover. LTT Discover empowers people from all walks of life to build confidence with a 100% free educational resources that span mindset, physical well-being, tool use, and more, helping them feel more comfortable and knowledgeable in their own journey. Check them out at lttdiscover.com. Thank them for sponsoring today's lesson and send your friends and family to their incredible free educational resources.
In this first one, we see this gal is just walking and minding her own business, but you can see her looking over her right and seeing what's going on, because on the left-hand side, see this dude walking down the street and he turns and vectors her direction and she ain't having it. And as she turns around, he re-vectors and she goes, nope, I'm running off. Now he's gonna chase her for a minute, and then he's gonna decide, well, that's my mistake, and run off, because she ran back towards where she knew there was some security guards and asked for help. And the security guard's gonna chase him a while, but that bad guy did his best Jesse Owens impression there and noped on out of there. Then guard's gonna come on back, yell at him, question his parentage and his lineage and all that stuff, but thankfully he is long gone. Now this next one, we see this guy driving by, and you're gonna see him drive by 5 o'clock in the morning, and if you look at the very top of the screen, there's a couple of women walking there, kind of grainy footage, of course, but he's gonna stop there and kind of back up and take a look at them, and they are thankfully paying just a little bit of attention. So you see this inside look here at a guard in a guard shack that this guy's just driven right by, and he is gonna drive up here and stop. I have sped this up a little bit just for the sake of time. He's gonna stop there under the street light and then eventually get out. Now watch down the left side, those women have been walking. They see him get out of the car and they're gonna nope right out of there and run off. Now the perp is gonna run off after him, but she runs over to where this guard shack is and asks for some help, screams for help. The guard comes out like he's gonna come out, and that was enough. Then the dude's like, nah, I'm not gonna fight the guard or whatever. He's gonna jump back in his car, and neither of those women were harmed. Now, the third one that we're gonna look at here, very different. You see these 3 ladies with a little baby and 2 dudes jump off a moto, and the ladies just scatter and leave this little toddler who can't be more than 2 years old all by himself. And the other woman's gonna run right by him again. They ran off with those ladies' phones and wallets, and they still run off, and the little boy's left to fend for himself. And let's think about these lessons.
Ooh, boy, Steph, leaving the child behind, that's gonna cause some consternation, you think?
Yeah, and the weird thing is this isn't even the first time we've seen this on video. It actually happens with some regularity. It's really shocking and surprising.
It really is. Think about it.
This first one, I think, has a really interesting tactic, Stephanie, in that she is paying attention for sure. She sees this guy. You can see her looking over on her right. And when she makes a change is when that guy starts vectoring in on her. And I think a lot of women miss that. And they kind of feel like, if I don't see him, he won't see me. But when she sees that vector change, she knows he is honing in on her.
Yeah, I think this is a fabulous example of that. She's aware of him from the very beginning, from almost a block away, and is watching and so sensitive to the fact that when she changes direction, he relines up to intersect her. And again, a second time, and then she doesn't hesitate.
Well, and I think here that it's very possible she went to go cross the street just to stay away from him. Saw him come down the block, a block or so down the road. Okay, I'm going to cross the street, and if this guy doesn't mean me any harm, if he ain't a nobody problem, then he won't vector my way. As soon as he does, now we know that he's not interested in just walking down the street, but he's interested in you.
And I think there's so many times we're concerned or nervous about how we'll make the other person feel. We don't necessarily want to cross to the other side of the street and make them feel like we think they're a bad guy. But you can see right here that she just did a tremendous job of defending herself here. And again, she's running somewhere to where there are people rather than just running away from him, which I think is fabulous.
Love it. Run to safety, not away from danger. Now, what made this guy leave? The presence of someone who could stop his aggression and do him harm. Now, this is great, and I think it worked very, very well. She ran to a place with a big, strong dude who can help. And I know that we're going to see some comments of, it's men to the rescue, but I would strongly have preferred that this woman be armed herself and be her own rescue who can do great harm to that guy if she needs to protect her life, and therefore is her own knight in shining armor.
As a woman, I don't want to be left at the mercy of whatever, someone that means me harm chooses to do, but I also don't want to be at the mercy of whether or not someone chooses to come to my rescue. I'd like to have a hand in determining my own fate.
And I also want to note here, most attackers are cowards. And we see that in the first two instances that really, good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people don't do this. They're cowards. And as soon as their force monopoly evaporates, they tend to scurry off like the rats they are. So that's just, again, any kind of resistance is usually enough kind of resistance. And yeah, this guy's going to run off and hurt somebody else maybe another day. Not my responsibility. My responsibility is to get myself to safety. I think this woman did an excellent job of that. Kudos to her. And I think the ladies in our second one here, also kudos to them for paying attention. So this guy stops. He does something we don't expect. He backs up while he's kind of waiting. He puts his car, under a street light and then stops there. These are all early warning detectors that, pre-attack indicators we got to pay attention to.
It doesn't necessarily mean that anything criminal is going on, but you should be paying attention. Now here where he gets out of the car, he doesn't get out and kind of look around. He gets off running for these women.
Yep.
So if they were already paying attention, they have a significant heads up ahead of time, and he's not going to be able to sneak up on them.
Yeah, and again, what is it that ceases the problem? Somebody who can stop his aggression, somebody who can meet their force, his force, with at least as much force. Now, that was a kind of fortuitous that she had that in this case. I'd prefer she'd be able to protect herself. Now, this is the one that kind of boggles my mind. We see 3 ladies and a toddler. That kid can't be more than 2 years old. 2 dudes jumping off the back of this moto. So 3 guys on a moto, which is kind of rare. But Steph, I mean, obviously somebody has got to be responsible for the baby.
I think what happens here in the beginning when they scatter, I think everyone else thinks someone has the baby's hands and they scatter. And while that's horrible and we should be thinking about our little one first, this isn't a rare thing totally that we see. It's not unusual for people to kind of panic and bolt and think about little ones later. So I think that's really something to be aware of and prevent against by having a plan. Who's in charge of defending the baby or doing this or that.
So I really think this is important. Who has the baby? So you got a little one, whether that's your child, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew, your best friend's kids, whatever the case may be. Always have who is in custody of the baby, because if you got to bounce, you defend yourself or those kinds of things, then that is your responsibility. And again, if you are a self-defender, you're armed or whatever, then you say, I'm not responsible for the baby. I'm responsible for the bad guys. Somebody else get a hold of the baby. Because what we see here is we see a child who is, a toddler who is left to their own devices, who I'm not worried about them kidnapping the baby at this point, but I am worried about the baby wandering out into the street.
Or just the emotional toll of being alone and
being abandoned.
And watching his loved ones be pummeled or running away from him or whatever. It's just heartbreaking. He looks completely lost.
Yeah, and I will say for these ladies, they kind of just ran away from danger and it didn't work for them. So again, no place to go to safety, nothing to do about that. So just trying to increase the distance from the danger. Unfortunately, the bad guys can run too. So it wasn't effective in this case. So when we say don't just run away from danger, run to safety, this is what we're talking about avoiding.
Right. And then we're going to see one of the women coming back here, potentially maybe to go help her friend or her relative, but she's kind of running half-heartedly towards that and also past this baby. I don't know if that's because there's some level of tunnel vision involved and she doesn't realize the little guy is still standing there looking for help. But again, he's just been left. So I think rather than just panicking and blindly kind of running and not actually doing anything, to make sure you actually have a plan to be changing your situation for the better. And
don't lose the most important responsibility you got, that little guy, in the light of, I got to get away from this danger. You got to protect the baby first. And maybe that means you can't run. Maybe that means you got to stand your ground. Maybe that means you got to have the tools on your person or just comply from the place that you are, but you've got to protect that baby first.
And if you don't have a baby, this could be your elderly relative. This could be eventually your grandchildren. It could be somebody who's an adult, but who doesn't have the capacity to defend themselves. I would suggest that at some point in our lives, we're all going to have custody of someone else. And considering that as part of your defensive plan is important.